Hey everyone, welcome back to L2 Games. It's Nick here, and today we're doing something a little different. So, I don't normally do these kinds of videos, but if you saw yesterday, we posted a podcast episode talking about the recent Marvel's Avengers controversy with the introduction of a pay-to-win mechanic in the form of paid XP boosters that give you a 1.5 times XP bonus for a set period of time for anywhere between I think 100 credits and 500 credits. So one of the things that we said yesterday that we were going to be on the lookout for was how Crystal Dynamics respond to this controversy, especially in light of the current state of the game and general lack of endgame content, as well as the fact that prior to the game's release at E3 2019, they stated that there would be no pay-to-win mechanics in this game and that microtransactions would be purely cosmetic in nature. Well, we've got the response, and it's not looking good for Crystal Dynamics or for the future of this game. Suffice it to say, the community is pissed, and with good reason, too. So I'll put the official developer response from Crystal Dynamics that they posted in the Play Avengers subreddit on the screen now. So they said, to our community, we appreciate the Marvel's Avengers community and want to foster an open and healthy dialogue with you for both criticism and praise. However, harassment is not tolerated. Decisions at the studio are not made by one person, they're made by a group of studio leaders. We welcome the feedback, but it's not appropriate to target, threaten, or personally attack our community team. They are here to champion your concerns and give voice to them. Help us keep conversations civil and productive while we continue to work toward making Marvel's Avengers an entertaining and fun experience for you. Thank you from everyone here at Crystal Dynamics. So, on the face of it, I agree with the general sentiment of the statement. Of course, I don't want to see anyone being personally attacked or threatened or harassed because of a decision made by the studio. However, the response here is not appropriate, and let me explain why. There are a few things they say in the statement that just have rubbed the community the wrong way. First and foremost is the notion that the community are being toxic and harassing and threatening. While there may be a small vocal minority who are doing those kinds of things, I've been combing through the Avengers subreddit nonstop for the last couple days, and I have come across hardly anything of that nature. What I have come across are posts from people who are understandably pissed off with a developer who has outright lied to them and broken a promise they made prior to the game's release and implemented a pay-to-win mechanic that is based purely on greed and a desire for a sudden influx of cash when there were alternatives available. As we said yesterday, they very easily could have revisited the pricing model for skins, and to be honest, I think that would bring a huge influx of sales. People don't want to spend $20 per skin, so if you cut the price or even just have sales more frequently, that would be a great way to bring in money, but instead they introduce a pay-to-win mechanic that not only breaks a promise they made to the community prior to the game's launch, but that they also created an artificial need for by nerfing the XP rate back in March. And you have to think that that was their plan from the beginning when you consider the fact that their justification at the time for nerfing XP was that players were overwhelmed and confused by the number of skill points they were getting all at once and trying to figure out how to allocate them. If you look at the character leveling in Marvel's Avengers, there are enough skill points so that regardless of how you spend them, you will be able to unlock every skill available to you. So, there isn't anything that should be overwhelming about leveling up quickly and having skill points to spend, because at the end of the day, regardless of how you spend them, you're going to end up in the same place. So that excuse just does not fly right now, especially in light of this. It's becoming increasingly clear that the entire purpose behind nerfing the XP rate was so that they could introduce these paid consumable, pay-to-win mechanics, and the community is upset. And rightfully so. Now, the response to this, as I said, has been to call the community toxic, and yet Crystal Dynamics has taken no responsibility for the decision made. This entire statement they released has been nothing but deflection, whether it's deflecting to the team that makes the decision, the group of studio leaders responsible for making the decisions, or saying that the community is being mean and harassing and threatening to them, of which there is very little evidence to begin with. And there is zero accountability on the part of a developer now who has shown a total lack of integrity by introducing a pay-to-win mechanic right when they get a huge influx of new players from Xbox Game Pass, and in a way that contradicts what they said they were going to do with this game. And it's not appropriate. Now, the next problem with their statement, and this sort of ties in with their lack of accountability as far as actually addressing the paid XP boosters, is that they say in their statement that they want to foster an open and healthy dialogue with the community. I just don't see how that's the case. I really don't. And here's why. First and foremost, they have said nothing in this response about the paid XP boosters, which are the root of this whole controversy. There is nothing. They haven't said that, oh, we've needed to adjust our strategy, we needed to introduce this, we felt it would be beneficial to the community. Nothing. They're just completely silent on the issue of XP boosters. Add to that the fact that this developer account on the subreddit has been absolutely silent since March of this year, when, oddly enough, their last post was to clarify the reasoning behind their XP Nerf. A dialogue is by its nature a two-way conversation, where both sides are contributing and both sides are listening. Crystal Dynamics does not want a dialogue. What they want is a one-sided narrative that suits their agenda right now. And that narrative is, the community is toxic and harassing us, and we're just trying to make this game the best we can. I'm sorry, but I don't believe that. Again, very little evidence of the harassment and threatening, although it's possible that the subreddit mods have been removing comments like that and banning people before people have been able to get around to seeing those comments. But if they're able to do that, that suggests that then it's a very small minority of the community who's engaging in that kind of behavior. On the other hand, there are a lot of people who are active in the Avengers community who are offering constructive criticisms and voicing their concerns and receiving zero response from the developer. Again, they have not addressed the XP booster issue. They've said nothing about it. And so how can it be a dialogue when only one side is engaging in the conversation? To this point in the game's life cycle, people have requested things like a rework of the gear system, a new leveling system, changes to resources, an easier to navigate UI, and it's largely fallen on deaf ears, it seems, because hardly any changes have been made to any of these things. And it's frustrating to the community when, despite all of that, it's very clear that Crystal Dynamics are working on the game, but they're doing it to introduce things like a paid XP booster. So for them to go and say that it's the community being toxic and that these decisions are made by a group of studio leaders, look, it doesn't matter that the decisions were made by a group of people. That group of people made a bad decision. It's a bad decision, and it betrayed the trust of the community, and people are upset. And to respond in a way that completely takes zero accountability and deflects the blame onto the community and away from the developers is not appropriate in this situation, especially given the current state of the game. And look, this is a live service game. In order to make a live service game sustainable in the long term, you need to foster a community that is going to continue to be invested in your game. Going out and calling the community toxic and failing to take accountability in a situation where you clearly made a bad decision is not a good way to keep a game that is already struggling alive in the long term. And judging from the community response, the general sentiment is that there is no longer any trust on the part of the community in Crystal Dynamics. Even the most staunch of defenders of this game have reached a point where they don't feel like they can trust the developer anymore, and where they feel like they've been slapped in the face and don't want to continue to support this game. And I don't blame them. There's been a lack of in-game content, a lack of engagement from the developers with the community, and now to take this kind of narrative and try to spin it against the community, it shows a lack of integrity on their part. And there are a lot of people who are in the Avengers subreddit who are not surprised at all by this response. Several hours before Crystal Dynamics posted their official response, there were people saying that, oh, well, they've got their heads in the sands and they aren't responding, so they're going to take some time and then find a way to deflect this and say that the community is being mean to them. And they were spot on. And when your response to controversy is that predictable, it comes across as not only lacking in integrity, but also really immature. As a game developer who has been handed the keys to one of the biggest intellectual properties in all of media ever, your game is going to be in the spotlight, and it is going to be constantly subject to criticism. If your only response to that criticism is to say that it's unfair or that you're being attacked anytime someone has a complaint to make about your game, then I'm sorry, but you just shouldn't be handling this kind of thing. And let's be honest here, folks. The only reason that this game is still alive is the fact that it is the Avengers and that it is a Marvel IP. If this were an original IP, there is not a chance that this game would survive this. And even now, there's only a slim chance because even the most dedicated members of this game's fan base are upset. Not just with the community response, but to the idea of introducing pay-to-win mechanics in general. And so as much as I said yesterday that I think that introducing the mechanic was the final nail in this game's coffin, I think it's actually this. I think their response has been a total disaster. And I think this is the end for Marvel's Avengers.